The Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court yesterday unveiled sentencing guidelines for drug offences, 2 offences of deception, and 2 sexual offences that will take effect from October the 1st. Justice Gartel Tom declared that after 2 years of toiling, the Sentencing Advisory Committee is laying out new guidelines for 5 areas: theft, robbery, rape, unlawful sexual intercourse, and drug offences. The Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court sentencing guidelines were created by Judge Janice Pereira, Chief Justice of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, who acted as President of the Sentencing Advisory Committee under joint chairmanship of Judge Tom, Justice of Appeal, and His Lordship Justice Ian Morley, High Court Judge. In her feature address, Chief Justice Pereira emphasized that the guidelines are not meant to be rigid. She said, and I quote, "I want to make clear that the guidelines are not intended and do not replace the exercise of a sentencing officer's discretion. Rather, what is required and what is expected is that sentences will follow the guidelines published for an offense unless to do so would not be in the interest of justice." End of quote. Director of Public Prosecutions Christopher Nelson says the new guidelines do not change the criminal law, but rather bring uniformity to sentencing.
What is expected to result from the guidelines is a consistency in the approach to sentencing. Certain specific steps must be followed and reasoned decision given. Now, before the guidelines were crafted, various magistrates and judges put together their own approach in arriving at a sentence. At times, these were not always consistent from sentence to sentence or between court to court. We've had several appeals where sentences have been reduced or otherwise varied. So the objective of the guidelines is to bring some consistency to the approach.
Nelson explained that the new guidelines outline starting points for sentencing.
So, for instance, for rape, and in a bad case of rape where the maximum sentence is 30 years, the guidelines proffers a starting point of 65%, or 75%, of the maximum sentence. So for a bad case of rape, on the face of it, a court should start at sentencing an accused or convicted person from a point of 22 and a half years. Now, that's not cast in stone or is not a dictate that the judge must follow. It's a guide to assist the judge in arriving at an appropriate sentence.
High Court Justice Ian Morley said the Eastern Caribbean can expect more sentencing guidelines to come on stream next Easter. The guidelines will apply to the countries where the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court governs. Cherry and Blackman Stephen, GBN News.